and welcome to this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hennig. This week on the podcast, we're going to get into the big news that happened this week, the big trades. Kawhi Leonard going to the Raptors, Manny Machado going to the Dodgers. Also, we're going to touch on the new Cloak and Dagger TV show, my review of it so far, along with my reaction to Rob Manfred's controversial comments about the best player in Major League Baseball, Mike Trout, and more comic book TV and movie news right here on the Mutant Blitz Podcast with your host, Josh Hennig. Topic number one on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. After weeks and weeks of speculation, Kawhi Leonard has finally gotten his wish. He is no longer a San Antonio Spur, but he didn't go to LA. Not to the Lakers, not to the Clippers. He didn't go to one of the powerhouse teams in the Eastern Conference. Not the Sixers, not the Celtics. No. Kawhi Leonard is a Toronto Raptor. Kawhi Leonard went to the only team in the NBA that is not located in the United States of America. And it's kind of apropos, is it not? Kawhi Leonard said he wanted to go to LA. There were rumors he would consider signing with the Sixers. We know that the Celtics had the kind of players that intrigued the Spurs the most. At the end of the day, the Spurs had to do what was best for them. And that's the number one point to take out of all of this. The Spurs were trying to get the best deal possible. There were multiple reports that the Sixers were offering Dario Saric, Robert Covington, and multiple draft picks for Kawhi. Apparently, that's not what the Spurs wanted. The Lakers were not going to give up the farm to get Kawhi Leonard. The Celtics were not going to overpay for a one-year rental. So around the entire league, teams were reluctant to jump to get one of the top 5 players in the league when healthy. And that's the caveat, when healthy. The Spurs were shopping basically an item. If you treat Kawhi Leonard like a car, he was a car that no one got the test drive. No one had any information on him about his health, about his situation. No one had talked to him before this whole thing went down. And that's probably the reason why the Spurs made this deal. The Spurs realized they weren't going to get a better option, a better player in return than DeMar DeRozan. And that's not a negative against DeRozan. DeRozan is an all-star. DeRozan was top 10 in the NBA this year in free throw attempts, free throws made, and points per game. So he is an offensive weapon. The question with him is the defense, the commitment, the motivation. And DeRozan showed from his posts on his Instagram story and on his social media platforms that he's very upset. He feels like he's been loyal to the Raptors. He gave them his all. He was a model citizen. He was a face of the franchise, and they kicked him to a curb for a one-year rental. We will have to see how motivated, if the Spurs can take that and twist it into motivation for DeMar DeRozan moving forward to potentially play a higher level of defense. I think the Spurs didn't want to go through a massive rebuild. They're not looking to start over. They already have LaMarcus Aldridge. They already have players in place that is an interesting mix of youth and veterans. Yeah, they lost Kyle Anderson, but they replaced him with Dante Cunningham. They still have Pau Gasol under contract. They still have Dejounte Murray. They still have players who can be impact role players. And getting a guy like DeMar DeRozan is a major addition for that team offensively in a Western Conference that has tons of talent and an endless amount of obstacles for a team like the Spurs to overcome. I think at the end of the day, the Spurs won this deal because the Raptors have a major problem on their hands. And that problem comes in the form of high-risk, high-reward gambling by their upper management. Masai Ujiri and the Raptors front office decided to fire Dwayne Casey. Not because he should be fired, but because they wanted to blame somebody that the number one seed in the Eastern Conference would get swept in the second round by LeBron James and the Cavs. You see, in the Eastern Conference, where the Pacers took the Cavs 7 games, where a thin Celtics roster took LeBron and the Cavs 7 games, the Raptors couldn't win a game in the playoffs. And they chose to blame Dwayne Casey, not the poorly built roster, but Dwayne Casey. So now, Masai Ujiri makes a high-risk gamble in getting Kawhi Leonard, a guy who has said multiple times he wants to play in LA, a guy who has said that he doesn't want to be in the Eastern Conference. Masai Ujiri is making a high-risk gamble that somehow he is going to convince Kawhi Leonard to stay in a Raptors uniform. If you factor in that players around the league now look at the Raptors and see them as liars and disloyal based on what DeMar DeRozan is saying, players around the league look at the Raptors organization as an NBA franchise that doesn't care about their star players. Look at how they treated DeMar DeRozan heading out the door. Nothing. No statement of thank you for your 9 years. No statement of thank you for your time in a Raptors uniform. Best of luck to you. Nothing. Just act like he didn't even exist. Even the Spurs and their horrible, messy relationship with Kawhi put out a message on social media thanking Kawhi. The Raptors have put themselves in a position that if they cannot keep Kawhi, then they got to blow the whole franchise up, roster-wise and front office-wise. If Ujiri can't keep his promises and keep his word to DeRozan, then how is Kawhi going to be able to trust the guy? Furthermore, the Raptors couldn't keep Chris Bosh. The Raptors couldn't keep Tracy McGrady. The Raptors couldn't keep Vince Carter. And you're telling me that you're going to find a way to keep Kawhi? That's silliness. Yeah, it's cool that they're going all in this year. It's fun that they're going, for everything this year. They think that the Eastern Conference is open. They think Kawhi is an upgrade over DeMar DeRozan. And they think that they have a shot to get to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. That's great. That's all well and good. But you are playing with fire. And Kawhi may be not fully healthy. We don't know where his health is. He may be a malcontent. We don't know where he is mentally, emotionally. He has been unavailable. Nobody knows what's really going on with him. This Raptors risk may get Masai Ujiri fired in a couple of years. Because if Kawhi leaves in free agency, and then Serge Ibaka leaves, you're left with Kyle Lowry. And you can't build around Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry has horrible numbers in the postseason. Kyle Lowry is the opposite of clutch. Kyle Lowry is the opposite of a guy who steps up in the moment and takes the big shot. He's just not that guy. He's not a superstar. And until we see Kawhi play at the level that we know he can play at, the Raptors are not one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference is still all about the Sixers and the Celtics. The Sixers and the Celtics are the only teams in the Eastern Conference with multiple superstar level players. The Sixers got Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. The Celtics have Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward. And then you look at the secondary stars. The Sixers have Markelle Fultz hopefully coming back this year, the former number 1 overall pick. Jason Tatum burst onto the scene last year. Jaylen Brown is no slouch. The Sixers have Dario Saric, doesn't get a lot of credit, but he is a very talented player in his own right. You look at the Bucks. They still have Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton. The Pacers have Victor Oladipo. The Wizards just hit a reshuffling of the deck by bringing in Dwight Howard to go along with John Wall, Bradley Beal, and Otto Porter, and Markieff Morris. The Eastern Conference has a lot of stumbling blocks for the Raptors to get past. This is not going to be an easy path back to the number 1 overall seed. They may be the 3rd or 4th seed this year, even with Kawhi. So don't think that Kawhi going to the Raptors guarantees anything, because in life, nothing is guaranteed. And until we see Kawhi in a Raptors uniform playing 30 to 40 minutes a night, it's all a bunch of what ifs. It's all a high-stakes poker move. Masai Ujiri is James Bond in Casino Royale, and he pushed all the chips to the middle of the table. And by this time next year, he may have lost all of those chips, and he may have been kicked out of the $1 million round in poker, because Kawhi is going to leave Toronto. He's not going to stay there. Masai Ujiri is not Sam Presti. Toronto cannot keep free agents. And they got rid of the one guy who's willing to stay for a high-risk, high-reward gamble on a one-year rental player. Topic number 2 in this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. We've been talking a lot about Marvel movies and Marvel TV shows lately, but I want to give the latest news on the DC Entertainment Universe. Based on all the reports that are coming out, I like the direction DC is going in with this next batch of movies, because what they're doing is they're getting back to the original concept of putting superheroes on the big screen, which is taking characters that people want to see, stories that people would be fascinated in, and bringing them to life, taking them off the pages of comic books and bringing them to life. So you got Aquaman coming out later this year. It looks like that story is basically going to be about Arthur Curry, who is Aquaman, having to search for the original King's Trident to try to stop his half-brother Orin from not just taking over all of the ocean, but conquering the world. It looks like that movie is going to be a great visual spectacle and a movie that has some good substance to it. Shazam looks like it's going to be more of a fun-sided movie. Billy Batson in the comics is a young kid who says Shazam. He becomes a superhero. Basically, he's an amalgamation of different Greek gods' powers all in one individual, thanks to magic. So they're going to have Shazam. That's going to be a little bit more of a fun movie. And then the news came out about the latest on the Birds of Prey film, which is going to be a female-centric DC spin-off movie with Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn in the movie. And we've been confirmed that basically the main cast outside of Harley Quinn, the movie, is going to be Black Canary, which you've seen a lot of Black Canary, at least a version of the character, in the CW shows, The Arrow, and also DC's Legends of Tomorrow. You're also going to have the Huntress. The Huntress made an appearance on the CW shows. They're going to have their own version of Helena Bertinelli's anti-hero character, shall I call him, because the Huntress at times is a murderer. She's not always a good guy, but she kind of plays both sides of the fence because she dishes out her own version of justice. And then you're going to have the introduction of Cassandra Cain, which is very exciting to me. Cassandra Cain is one of the most prestigious fighters in all of comics. Her martial arts skills in DC Comics puts her in a position where she could beat Batman. She could beat Ra's al Ghul. She could beat Deathstroke. She is that skilled of a fighter. So you're talking about a character you're putting in a movie who, if they do it right, is a character that nobody can beat one-on-one, or maybe even three-on-one for that matter. And then they're going to introduce Renee Montoya. She's a Gotham City detective. She has a lot of work with Batman in the comics. And it looks like that's going to be the main 4 heroes of the movie fighting. What reports are saying is the villain is going to be a Batman villain who has not yet appeared in any movie. So that's an interesting, thing to ponder. Is there a villain in Batman comics that has not been used? People's imaginations are going to speculate for days on that one. But what we do know is that this movie is expected to be coming out at some point, either late next year or early in 2020. And between Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, and then Wonder Woman 2, it gives DC an opportunity to kind of rehabilitate after the tough hit that Justice League took, after all the controversy surrounding Batman v Superman. This allows DC to build a universe. Get back to the idea of being creative, having good storytelling, having fun, good action, and allowing the entirety of their movie universe to flesh out a little bit more. Especially with everyone is now nitpicking Justice League more and more. They're grasping for straws of what Wonder Woman 2 really means. People are going to see Aquaman, and if it's a hit, people are going to want to see more of Aquaman. If Wonder Woman 2 is another big hit, like the first Wonder Woman was, people aren't going to care about half the stuff that happened in the movies before. If the Flash movie that's supposed to come out is really what people hope it is going to be, like the Flashpoint comic book story, it gives DC an opportunity to reset their universe. So at least DC is on track. They are moving in a direction that will allow themselves to clean up their cinematic universe. They're never going to be as powerful and as good and as elite as Marvel is, but they can at least be in the conversation, and that's half the battle. Topic number 3 on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I did want to touch on the news became official on Wednesday. Manny Machado is going to the Los Angeles Dodgers in a deal that will send 5 prospects from Los Angeles to the Baltimore Orioles. This was a deal that was rumored for about 24 hours before the deal actually happened. There were some issues in the completion of the deal, but the deal has finally gotten done as of Wednesday night. And the main reason I want to touch on this is because when it comes to baseball, there is so much uncertainty when it comes to second half rentals in baseball. I was not a fan of teams like the Brewers or the Phillies sacrificing all these prospects and all these players to get a guy like Machado, not because he couldn't have an impact for their team, but because of the fact that when you're sacrificing that much for one player and then the guy leaves you in free agency, you're basically like a bride stuck at the altar and the groom never showed up. Or the groom showed up, started doing the vows, then decided to leave. That's basically what would have happened. And this is a risk the Dodgers are willing to make because they know they were just in the World Series last year. The Phillies, they're nowhere near a World Series right now. The Cubs, they're on the precipice. The Brewers think they're a contender. There are teams in the National League that thought they were in the conversation. But realistically, if the Dodgers get everything squared away, lined up, and straightened out, they are going to be in a prime position to have a chance to go back to the World Series. So you make the risk. You go all in for a Manny Machado. It makes a lot of sense. But there have been numerous times in the past where these trade deadline players don't stay where they're traded. Zach Greinke leaves in free agency, goes to the Dodgers. CC Sabathia leaves the Brewers, goes to the Yankees. Mark Teixeira goes to the Yankees. Carlos Beltran traded to the Astros, leaves in free agency for the Mets. Randy Johnson traded to the Astros, leaves in free agency for the Diamondbacks. There is a long history of players. They get traded, they don't stay. And that's not a negative against the players, and that's not a negative against the teams. It's just the nature of free agency in baseball, where baseball is not a salary cap restrictive game. Yeah, they have luxury tax restrictions, but some teams don't care about spending that extra money. They'll just keep spending and spending until they can't spend anymore. We saw that with the Yankees in the mid-2000s. There are plenty of teams that are not worried about the price tag when it comes to a free agent, such as Manny Machado, such as a Bryce Harper, who is also going to hit free agency. I don't know if Manny Machado is going to stay in LA. There's no guarantee of that. But we know that the Phillies are going to be in hot pursuit of multiple free agents this offseason. We know the Yankees are going to be looking to continue to upgrade their team. We know that if the Nationals lose Bryce Harper in free agency, they have to find a comparable star to fill the void without his star on that roster. So when you really get down to it, the Manny Machado deal, people are saying, oh, the Dodgers won the Manny Machado sweepstakes. But there's no guarantee Manny's going to stay in LA. He may leave and go to the Phillies. He may leave and go wherever. The Braves. I don't know whoever's willing to spend the money. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's the funny thing. That's the finicky thing about the trade deadline. When you're going out and getting that caliber of star, there's no guarantee he's going to stay if he's in the last year of his contract. If Manny's in the last year of his contract, he wants to test free agency. He wants to be wined and dined. He wants to be courted. He wants teams to basically recruit him. People forget, one of the reasons why LeBron wanted to go through free agency the first time is because he never got to go to college. He doesn't know what it's like to be recruited. He doesn't know what it's like for people to come to him and explain to him why he should come to their franchise. That was an experience that he wanted, and that looks like an experience that Manny Machado wants as well. Short term, great move for the Dodgers. Long term, he may not be there anyway. The Dodgers will be without 5 prospects. At least one of them probably would have turned out to be a very good player, because the odds are that in baseball, typically 1 in 5 of your prospects turn out to be good to very good players. So at least one of those guys who end up in the Orioles is going to be a very good player. At least that's what the odds tell us about how the development of these prospects goes about. And I don't think it's a negative for any other team in baseball that they didn't get Machado, because there are still other players to be had. Yeah, they're not as big profile names, but Chris Archer in Tampa, can somebody pry him away? Blake Snell looks like a rising star as a young pitcher in Tampa as well. The Blue Jays are going to be shopping players like J.A. Happ, Curtis Granderson, Josh Donaldson. We know that Brad Hand is going to be a available piece, the relief pitcher from the Padres. Mike Moustakas from the Royals. The third baseman is going to be available in trade. Cole Hamels in Texas. Adrian Beltre may or may not be a Texas Ranger after July 31st. There's a lot of players that still may get moved, and those players may have just as big of an impact as Manny Machado. Do not overlook that Justin Verlander was not expected to have the impact that he did with the Astros. He was a major catalyst for that team to get to the World Series. And now you look at that Astros team this year. Verlander and Cole and Morton are their 3 best pitchers, not Dallas Keuchel, the former ace of the staff. He's been struggling for the last 18 months. Something to be said for the Astros willing to take the risk, getting a pitcher, turns out to be even better than anyone hoped he could have been. Could Cole Hamels be that guy this year? Could Chris Archer be that guy this time round? There may be a guy out there who may not be as big of a name as Manny Machado, may not garner as many prospects as Manny Machado, but could have just as big of an impact on the playoffs as Machado. Topic number 4 on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. So, Marvel executive Kevin Feige gave a little bit more information about the upcoming Captain Marvel movie and why Carol Danvers' character is being set in the 1990s. And part of his explanation was because they wanted to tap into an era that was before Nick Fury knew about things like aliens, before he knew about the Kree and the Skrull races, before he knew about superpowered characters. And they wanted to tell a story in an era where they didn't have to worry about anything except for telling the origin story of Carol Danvers, and do it in a way that is going to be uninhibited by anybody else's stories. And I love the fact that they're going to give this character so much room to breathe. And this is the beauty of what Marvel is doing, because unlike DC, Marvel is taking characters who are not the A-list characters and they're elevating them. They're not depending on the name of the character to elevate the movie. They're giving you great stories, great movies, and letting it speak for itself. Marvel built an entire cinematic universe without Spider-Man, without the Fantastic Four, and without the X-Men. The Fantastic Four, the first family of comics, one of the oldest running story arcs in all of comic books, Marvel or DC. X-Men is one of the most successful comic book franchises of the last 40 years. You don't have all 3 of those characters. You are going into it with characters who have been overlooked and you elevated them. And you're going to take a character in Captain Marvel who has a lot of great history, a lot of great storytelling involved with her character, and you're going to allow her to breathe on her own. Kind of like what Marvel did with Ant-Man. They weren't hamstrung by other characters from other movies. Similar to what they did with Thor, similar to what they did with a lot of these characters. Yeah, they're connected to a bigger universe, but they allow their first movie to let them breathe on their own. And that's the great thing. You're going to have a character who's going to be fun. She's going to be different than other superheroes. And she's also going to be insanely powerful. And Kevin Feige also confirms that they're tapping into the Kree-Skrull War. And the significance of that is, in Marvel Comics, there's all these races from distant galaxies that are in their universe, and part of it has to do with these two ancient races. We've seen a lot of the Kree in numerous Marvel TV and movie conversations. Mostly we've seen the Kree in the show Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC, which is going into its last season next summer. But we've also seen references of the Kree in different films, one of them being the Guardians of the Galaxy, since it's set in a different galaxy than Earth is set in. So we know of the Kree and how they factor into the Marvel Universe on various levels. But we haven't seen the Skrull yet. And the Skrull are a race of people that have been fighting with the Kree for supremacy over the universe for centuries. And the reason why Earth is involved is because in Marvel Comics, Earth is the nexus of galaxies and the multiverse. So Earth is kind of like the place to go if you want to get anywhere quickly and easily. If you want to go to a different galaxy, you want to jump to another dimension, you want to set up an attack on your enemy, you want to protect something else, you go to Earth. And its involvement in just the mythology of Marvel Comics is significant because of its location. So that's why the Kree and Skrull kind of loop in Earth with this. And Carol Danvers is going to have a chance to stand on her own 2 feet in this movie, and you're going to have it interconnected. We're going to find out why, at the end of this movie, why Nick Fury sends out a page to her at the end of Avengers Infinity War film. Her relevance to Avengers 4 is all going to come all together early next year. But they're going to do it in a way that they're putting her in an era that allows her to be separate from everything else. They're giving her her own room to breathe. And you're introducing an entire aspect of the larger Marvel universe onto the big screen in a way that is going to allow this next phase of movies after Avengers 4 to have a lot of plot points to work with, because you're going to see more and more of the Asgardian mythos phased out because Asgard was destroyed. You're going to see a little bit more of the Iron Man stuff phased out, the Captain America stuff phased out, because those actors are going to slowly go away. Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., these actors and their contracts are going to be coming up very soon. So you got to transition to another arc of storytelling. You got to transition to another entity as a whole. And what better way to do it than with a character that adds more depth and more history to your cinematic universe, like a character set in the 90s, such as Captain Marvel. Topic number 5 on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred, for the most part, has shown himself to be a breath of fresh air for baseball. He's trying to move baseball into the 21st century in many ways. He's trying to increase the pace of play. He's trying to make the game more watchable, more interesting for the modern generation of the fan. You know, the fan that has a low attention span. It needs constant action, needs constant engagement. And Rob Manfred has been trying to do things to help baseball become more progressive after years of having stiff people like Bud Selig running the game. But Rob Manfred, like anyone, is not perfect. And he finally made his first major mistake. In an interview with ESPN's PTI, Commissioner Rob Manfred said this about the biggest star in baseball when he was asked about marketing baseball stars. This is what Rob Manfred had to say about the best player in baseball, Mike Trout.
The marketing of our players, raising their profile, growing their brand is a really high priority for us. And I think where Mike is relevant, our ability to do that in today's world is dependent on one thing. Player marketing is dependent on having the player. I think Mike Trout could raise his profile tomorrow if he decided that he wanted to engage a little more fully, give up some more of his free time. And that's his choice. I mean, that really is his choice. What player marketing takes in today's world, you got to be willing to be out there on social media. You got to be willing to put yourself out there, and you have to devote time to it. And we do think about it, and it is a priority for us.
Rob Manfred just threw the best player in baseball under the bus. That's what that was. The two-time league MVP, two-time All-Star Game MVP, on pace to break numerous baseball records, setting himself apart each and every year as the best player on the planet. And Rob Manfred says that Mike Trout doesn't do enough to market himself. It is not purely Mike Trout's responsibility to market himself. This is the mistake that the NHL has made. This is the mistake that many mixed martial art organizations have made. They want to be handed stars. They don't want to develop stars anymore. The only reason why you know all the NBA players you do is because the NBA puts them front and center in every commercial, in every ad, in every television, digital, and print ad. Baseball used to be great at putting their players at the forefront. Now, more often than not, people don't even know who are on the teams. Football, people are intensely just nitpicking every roster move. People know many times who the 40th and 50th man on an NFL roster is. Half people don't even know who the best player is in the Chicago White Sox. If you're wondering, that's Jose Abreu. But you don't know who Jose Abreu is. And it's not just because his team stinks and they can't make the postseason, but because no one talks about him. Baseball doesn't promote him. Mike Trout is in a Los Angeles market, but because baseball doesn't focus on the Angels, because the sports media does not have an interest in the Angels, Mike Trout gets forgotten about. Most of this season, when we've talked about the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, as they're called, which used to be the California Angels back in the day, we've heard about Albert Pujols passing guys on the home run list. Shohei Ohtani, the two-way player with his pitching and his hitting. But we haven't heard about Mike Trout. Whose fault is that? Rob Manfred blaming Mike Trout for his lack of marketability is shameless. It's a lazy cop-out by the commissioner. It's a move basically saying it's not my problem. It shouldn't be my responsibility. What he doesn't understand is that one of the league's responsibilities is to give fans a reason to turn on the television, to pull up the app on their phone, to go to the ball game. Sports more and more have alienated themselves from the working class fan because of the ticket prices, of parking prices, concessions, merchandise, and so on. So you're hurting an entire demographic of people who would be interested in your sport. And the biggest reason why people watch the NBA and the NFL is because it's on every network. They can watch an NBA game all season long. They can watch an NFL game all season long. They get to watch college football, the future players of the NFL, every Saturday. The NFL every Sunday, Monday night, Thursday night. It's available and accessible to everybody. The NBA, it's on ESPN, it's on ABC, it's on TNT, multiple nights of the week. Baseball, I don't know if it's on Fox or FS1 or ESPN. I can't even find it sometimes. How's that Mike Trout's fault? Back in the day, baseball went out of their way to act like every guy on a team was a star. That was the whole point of the all-star from every team concept. They promoted Ricky Bottalico in 96 when the Phillies were the host team, and that Phillies team in 96 was horrible. Ricky Bottalico was their only all-star. But baseball made it like on the television broadcast and at the game itself, Ricky Bottalico is one of the best players in baseball. They made you think that. They pushed you to think that. The attitude was that the men on each side of the field, the 50-plus players at the game, were the best players in baseball. Baseball promoted the game, they promoted the players, and they promoted the event and the broadcast in a way that made you think these are the best players in baseball. Nowadays, people really aren't sure who is the best player. Not because they don't love baseball, but because they're not given an incentive or reason to watch anymore. If Mike Trout was on the Yankees, everyone would know who he is. If Mike Trout was on a team that was constantly on television, more people would know who he is. If he was constantly in marketing campaigns and digital ads, more people would know who he is. Most of you can name numerous football and basketball players, but you can't name baseball players, and that is Major League Baseball's fault. That is not the players' fault. That is not Mike Trout's fault. That is Rob Manfred and the stiff old heads up at Major League Baseball headquarters who can't evolve past the 1980s to catch up with the times and see what the NFL and the NBA has done. Even the UFC has done. Take some notes, buddy. Stop blaming it on the athlete. You make the stars. You create the larger-than-life marquee name. But instead, what do you promote? You promote let's play ball. You promote getting out and playing baseball and the team. You made the game more expensive. You disincentivized many of your former fans from keeping up with the game. That's your fault and your ilk, Rob Manfred. That is not Mike Trout's fault. Do not blame Mike Trout because people don't know the best player in the game. Blame yourself for not putting Mike Trout's star higher, not pushing him higher. Instead, what do? You say the guy needs to be on more social media. I'm sorry, wasn't there just a guy in the All-Star game? Oh, that's right. The Brewers pitcher, Josh Hader, tweet from 5 years ago, right? With racist and homophobic comments in it. Is that the kind of more social media you want from Mike Trout? Well, of course you don't want that. So which is it? You want the kid to live a good life and be respectable? You want the kid to be professional, keep getting better each and every year? 26 years old, each year gets better. It's not on Mike Trout to promote himself. It's on the game to elevate their stars. You heard me just talk about Marvel. Marvel Cinematic Universe took characters who were lesser known characters and elevated them. The NBA elevates its players. Baseball needs to start elevating its players and stop blaming its stars why they're not bigger superstars. Topic number 6 on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. So this summer has been the debut of the new Marvel television show Cloak and Dagger. Again, Marvel taking characters that people don't know a lot about and creating something that is not just interesting, but that causes you to keep watching. I never thought in my life that I would see the characters Cloak and Dagger have a successful anything. In fact, the origins of Cloak and Dagger in the comics and a lot of the stories they're involved in are practically dumb. I'm just being honest with you. Their characters are bizarre. They were not written very well in the 80s and 90s. They did not have a lot of substance. How they got their powers was just weird and goofy. The characters overall it was just all a mess. Their introduction into the bigger Marvel universe on television and movies and how they've connected them in the bigger picture has been done in a very tasteful, smart, and well-executed manner in a way that I'm impressed. For those who are trying to still figure out the bits and details, so the characters Tandy and Tyrone. Tandy is Dagger, Tyrone is Cloak. Their powers are directly related to an incident that happened that almost killed them, but their powers helped save their life. And the way they explain their powers is because of getting their powers from the same source that was shown in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Agent Carter second season, which is known as the Dark Force or Zero Matter. And apparently Roxxon is the company that is constantly in search of this Dark Force and Zero Matter below the surface in New Orleans. Now, let's deal with both aspects. First of all, Roxxon is historically a very evil and devious and underhanded organization in Marvel Comics. In many ways, it's portrayed as a big corporate company that does a lot of illegal experimentation and pretends they have a good public image, but behind the scenes are doing bad things. So what they do is they take these two teenagers who got their powers before they became teenagers because of this big accident that happened with this explosion and this release of this, what seems to be now Zero Matter, which they're describing as extremely powerful and highly volatile, allows now for Cloak and Dagger, after season 1, to have a bigger connection to the larger Marvel universe. And hopefully as a result, even though it is on Freeform, which for those who don't know was formerly known as ABC Family, removing the ABC and the family from the name of the network has allowed them to operate with a little bit more of a flexibility and the edge of a premium network without going all in and being as violent and as vulgar as an HBO or a Cinemax, any of those channels. It kind of allows them to function in the same mode of a USA Network, for example, but maybe a little bit more younger and edgier. The fascinating thing about Cloak and Dagger is you have a show that realistically is introducing to people the concepts that never have been shown on movies and television before. Teenage superheroes working through problems in the Marvel universe. Look, we've seen teenage heroes before, but we haven't seen them in the Marvel sense with this kind of storytelling, with this kind of bigger universal connections. Obviously, Detective O'Reilly knows Misty Knight from Luke Cage. We know that if we're getting involved in Zero Matter and the Dark Force, could that maybe mean a future appearance in the second season by a Ghost Rider? Or could we see some connection with Luke Cage and one of the characters from the Netflix shows later on? With Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. going into its last season, is there an opportunity to take one of the characters from that show, whether it's Quake, whether it's Fitz and Simmons, whether it's Mac, or any of those characters, and kind of roll them in to Cloak and Dagger? There's a lot of different variables that Marvel can do with having this show and it be successful as it is. Introducing a show like Cloak and Dagger during the summer allows you to kind of experiment to see if audiences would actually like and appreciate a show like this. When you're introducing characters like Daredevil and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and Iron Fist on Netflix, you're doing it with characters that, even though they're not on the level of an Iron Man, not on the level of a Captain America, they're still well known enough to the casual comic book reader and viewer that they say, okay, I have an understanding what I'm walking into. But when you're getting a 90% rating from Rotten Tomatoes, when you're getting an audience score of 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, on a network that most people don't even know exists, okay? Let's be realistic. I didn't even know where Freeform was until this show came out. I didn't know anything about the whole ABC Family to Freeform changeover. I had to go research all this stuff. For this show to do what it's doing now, after everything that has happened with television, with linear versus digital, with playback, you look at a show like Designated Survivor was not doing well in the overall live ratings, but the playback ratings was doing so excellent that even though the show was canceled, Netflix wants to buy up the show. That's a non-comic book show. That's just a regular ABC show with Kiefer Sutherland. You look at Cloak and Dagger, for them to be averaging about 1,000 viewers between 18 and 35 per week, just on the live viewing on the network that, again, most people don't know about at a time of year where most people are not watching television, says a lot about the potential for this show to grow. I think that this show has the chance to do what The Gifted will never be able to do on Fox, which is allow you to tap in to two different ends of a spectrum. You tap into a younger viewership and you tap into a hardcore comic book viewership as well, gaining from two different audiences to come into one place. The CW has been doing it for over a decade now. It started with Smallville, more recently with the Arrowverse, with Arrow and The Flash. Now you see Marvel trying to tap into that same type of audience. You know the Runaways are on Hulu. You have Cloak and Dagger now on Freeform. Disney may be setting the groundwork to have a whole litany of programming and shows that they can just corner the market on and force networks to buy their programming more and more because they're putting out a good product. I think the issue with Disney right now is with Cloak and Dagger. Can they learn from the mistakes of Inhumans and Agent Carter? Inhumans was so poorly written. It was so poorly executed. They didn't elevate those characters. They didn't write it very well. In some ways, they tried a little too hard. A show like Agent Carter would have been very successful and very good if they maybe gave it a little bit more of a punch. And the same thing with Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It kind of lost some of its luster because of the fact that all these shows are supposed to be interwoven into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the first two seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you saw appearances by characters who were in the movies. In Agent Carter, you were promised a connection to the movies, but instead they made a connection between Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So what you're doing is you're limiting your scope. You're limiting your casual fan interest. And for comic book television shows, if you don't create a vast universe that creates interest like the CW has with their niche of DC superheroes, Marvel, hopefully with Cloak and Dagger, can start expanding on a universe that was already built by Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., by Agent Carter, but not make the same mistakes they did or have the total bizarro world that Inhumans was and have absolutely no connection to the larger universe as a whole. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. Appreciate you joining me each and every week as we bring you the top stories from the sports world and the comic book, movie, and television universe. If you like this podcast, hit a like button below and subscribe so you can catch the podcast each and every week. If you have any comments or thoughts on the topics we brought up this week, drop in the comment section below. And we'll catch you next week as we bring you the Mutant Blitz Podcast each and every week right here on this YouTube channel with me, your host, Josh Hennig.